Ciao friends! In this video we will see the new features in DAX Optimizer 1.4, the analysis of row-level security filters and calculation groups. Let's start with the demo. Let's start with the row-level security. When you define a security role and you define a row-level security expression, a filter expression, the DAX code could be the reason for performance issues. The new version of DAX Optimizer introduces the ability to analyze the content of those expressions and to detect issues, also estimating the cost of those issues and creating a sort of prioritization of the effort so that you will fix the more expensive security filters first. So let's take a look at how it works. This is a model that has a few expressions, a few roles in the row level security. And as you see, we have this new tab, RLS, where we see the list of the row level security filters. So you see a list of roles and you see also the tables, because each role could have filters in different tables. In this case, we have only two rows with one filter each role in the table store. Now, as you can notice, there are two roles here. One is one contains some issue in the DAX code and the other does not. And you see also the relevance and the number of issues, just like any other measure. Now, the relevance is actually used to compare the cost of this filter compared to other filters, but also compared to measures that you have in the model. Indeed, if I enter this issue, you see that we have in this corner a sort of chart that compares the cost of this issue with the cost of the other more expensive issues in the model, which in this case are measures. If I move the mouse here, you see that the next expensive element in this model is the measure sales amount, which has a much lower cost compared to this security filter. So this is a case where the cost of the security filter is particularly expensive. Now, we can also detect potential issues, potential patterns that can be improved, just like any other measure. In this case, there is not much. There is a function that could be called and stored in a variable at the beginning. This could provide us certain improvement. Other times, you will just use this detection in order to figure out which cost could have a security filter and try to implement a more effective pattern for that. At the moment, we don't have specific issues for the security roles, but this is a feature that will be added later. Now, if I go back to the list of the RLS, I can also include in the expert view the additional information about the CPU cost and the RAM cost, just like any other measure that we have in the model. So this is what we have, and of course the cost for the filter, which is a row level expression applied to a table, depends on the number of rows you have in the table. So you can expect a bigger cost for tables that have a larger number of rows. The second feature I'm happy to introduce is the analysis of the calculation groups. If your model has at least one calculation group and you analyze the model with a new version of the engine, you will see this new tab, Calc Items, that shows the list of all the calculation items in all the calculation groups. However, in this list, you only see the number of issues for each calculation item. And for example, if I click on this calculation item, I can see that the two potential issues have been detected. However, you see that the impact is always 0%, because the calculation group could be applied on any measure. And so the actual calculation will require to know which measure you are going to use with the calculation group, which will produce a very large number of combinations. And so basically, it's not something that we could do in a static way like we do for all the other measures. However, we received a lot of requests to get this feature because actually detecting these potential issues is still valuable even if we cannot provide a prioritization of the issue. So we cannot estimate whether the first issue is more important than the second one, but actually having this information can be helpful to improve the calculation groups and the calculation item expressions in your model. So these are the new features of the new version of DAX Optimizer 1.4. You will find a lot of links in the description of the video. You will find more information in the documentation. And as usual, enjoy DAX!